do the rest.
I see. I
It's a deal.
see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Right. There are just a few more steps I have to do about making sure I. We are live.
Okay, cool. All right, let's press the button for my side as well. Uh, right, so I'm always really happy to have Claire in this joint live streams. I don't know if I mentioned, I think we're trying to make it a series of covering lots of important stuff. It's a bit like my speaker's corner stuff, but in a lot more detail. Let me do a quick intro. So, my intro is I'm a Muslim. I usually do happiness classes because I want to make Islam more accessible to everybody. So I just say, like, here are some happiness truths from Islam, the only religion that actually works. Okay, just statistically. It's not like Buddhism, which just sounds good but doesn't actually work, which is like the fastest dying religion. Um, yeah, and last time I described Claire as a revolutionary, but I'm a part-time revolutionary, I would say. That's kind of, I don't really just do happiness classes just for the fun of it, is I really do want to change the world. And then we've got Claire, who is, I feel like you're a full-time revolutionary. You seem to be busy doing something all the time. How would you describe yourself, Claire?
Well, I suppose by occupation, I am trying to change the minds of everybody around us. And every time I think of a new idea, other ideas branch out, and that there doesn't seem to be an end to it, unfortunately. Hopefully, it will end in me getting my way and the world getting a bit better. But I mean, you talk about me as if I am that terribly busy, but I suppose it is busy making, asking all those questions and getting ignored by all those people and listening to them give their pathetic excuses for not answering.
You gotta have patience with this revolution. It's happening anyway. Just you just have to jump. For me, it's just jumping on board. It's tough. It's tough work, though. I appreciate it. But let me just tell for people who don't know much about Claire, um, she's agnostic, but wants Sharia law to be applied to all Western countries to fix their. I would say if there were kinds of things that you want to fix, I would say they kind of come under financial and social problems of the West. Is there any other sort of category of things you're trying to fix with Sharia law?
Well, all the departments of state that you can think of: foreign policy, domestic policy, economic policy, social policy, education policy.
Environmental? Yeah, I would say because Islam is probably the most green religion, but I don't know if that you've thought about that.
I have indeed, because our culture of consumerism, as I see it, is actually getting people to want things that they never thought of having before, buying it with money they don't have, and getting
Yeah,
themselves into debt over it, and fractional reserve banking and usury encourages that. And we
yeah.
should, basically be more responsible about borrowing and lending as individuals and governments.
Yeah, so overconsumption is probably the biggest problem, and then sort of secondary is actually trying to be green. But if you're over-consuming, you're not really going to fix the problem any other way if you don't fix that first. So yeah, I mean,
Manufacturing
yeah,
also and fashion is really the most wasteful of all. I mean, they actually destroy perfectly good things in order not to, for marketing reasons. They don't want people to know about it or wear it or whatever, and they destroy perfectly good things.
yeah, buy secondhand is cool. Yeah, so cool. I'm really excited as always with this discussion, partly because. It's going to be, I think it's going to be funny in socially awkward or politically incorrect ways because it's going to be super sexist, is how I feel. And it's always fun having Claire um, sort of unrestrained. And I like to say I'm restrained, but people have told me I'm not. So we will see what people think. So it'll be an interesting duo because I explain things a certain way, and I feel like Claire has her own style. But I do what I want to do before I get into it, because when I say I'm going to be really sexist, then people stop listening, and I personally don't care what people think, but I want to help people, so I do care a little bit in that sense, right? And for them to understand the need of what I call good sexism, I want to give them a chance by giving them an idea of what's going on. Why? So the topic of this show is going to be, are gender roles the key to Islam's success? And everybody knows Islam, you could say, is a very sexist religion, or definitely has probably the most clear gender or sex roles. I don't really like the word gender roles. Men do this, women do that. Everybody else, Christianity is just like, leaving everything behind just to be agreeable. But Islam is the most firm. But I want people who are, let's say, woke or leftist and things like that, to have a chance to accept these ideas. I don't want them to be too put off. And we were just talking about it before. Why is it that people do not accept the logically, plainly obvious that men and women are different? And one discussion, I don't want to go into too much before we get into it, but one discussion we had on WhatsApp was something along the lines of, the way I understood it, and you said it, you can say it your way, is that there are a lot of men who are not in stable relationships and will do anything to be accepted. And maybe this is not helping actually, but maybe people can become self-aware about this, and then they will do anything to be agreeable to women who want to be like men. But I would say those women are the worst women to be in a relationship with. It's going to end in disaster, because they want to get their own way all the time. They don't understand how relationships work. In short, marry a Muslim woman who knows how to, work with somebody. She knows her roles and etc. But maybe this is not helping. I don't know. Yeah, what would you say? Like, what is the reason why we seem to have ignored the obvious reality that men and women are different, and it's politically incorrect to even say men and women are the same? And we're going to say a lot more. I'm going to suggest a lot more. I don't know, scary things like women shouldn't work, for example. What is the problem, and what maybe could people open some men's eyes, or even women's eyes, really, to the fact that they should agree with these gender roles, just so they get comfortable before they hear all this scary stuff that we're going to talk about?
Well, I think the best way to work out whether women think they've got what they want under feminism is to ask women in their 40s, the ones who are childless, whether they regret being childless or not. Because really that's a crucial thing, because I think a woman, before she hits, her 40s, she still thinks she can, get it all together and meet the perfect guy, or and then, well, I suppose you should ask women at every age what the hell they want, and I think you will find that they don't really know. They don't really know. They say that they want a certain kind of man at a certain age, and then they change their minds as as time goes by. But I think what men are very consistent about is that they like their women young and pretty and sweet-natured, and they don't seem to change their mind as they get older.
Yeah, they don't want masculine, disagreeable men women that are going to fight them all the
Yes, but,
time.
but women wouldn't either. All these women who call themselves cat ladies, or they don't get me. Okay, they probably don't think of themselves as cat ladies, but maybe people who pity them might call them cat ladies. But the thing is, I would ask these cat ladies how they would feel if they had a pet who could talk. and who would make sarcastic remarks from time to time,
When you say
criticizing
cat
that.
ladies, like mad cat ladies, the ones who are left by themselves only with the cats, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
women who have had their maternal instincts thwarted and are left
Okay,
only with cats for company. And
sure.
you know, how would they feel, you know, really about having a cat who could talk and who would be and who's more intelligent than they are? Just supposing. Would these women like to have to keep a pet that is more intelligent than them, who is more articulate than them, perhaps, and more critical of them? And I don't think a lot of people who have animals, who have pets, would actually like them if they could speak.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I feel like the reason why people go with animals nowadays, actually, I've done some research on this, especially dogs, is because people are unable to handle relationships with humans because they don't have patience anymore because they're too selfish. And so that's why the number of dogs being owned is rocketing in the UK and in the West generally. Because so I'm not sure if they would give the right answer. The mad cat ladies would give. I don't want to be. I'm trying to. I'm actually shouldn't be trying to be insulting by saying mad cat ladies. I actually genuinely feel sorry for all these women who are left alone and really are bitter. So anyway, I suppose that's the introduction. It's like we really don't want people to be miserable. And I think we need sort of wake up call, and the wake up call is going to be a bit uncomfortable. It's going to be different. The
For
truth
everyone,
is,
it's not just women.
yeah,
Because you were talking about these men. I think that there is a label for them called simps. These men
yeah,
who you know praise these women and agree with everything they say in the hope of gaining sexual access to them.
yeah. And then often if they don't, they're yeah, with it, exactly. If people search the term simp up, so we don't have to go into all that detail and sidetrack. But yeah, it doesn't work, is what Claire is saying, to suck up to people and not have any principles of your own. But anyway, so let's go for it. So the question we're trying to answer today, and I'm going to break down into lots of different sub questions, is are the gender roles key to Islam's success? And then you might say, what success? Just to give a bit more of an intro. And the success is, well, first of all, it's the fastest growing religion, but it's also um, why is it the fastest growing religion? It's because its ideas are being uh, continued into the next generation through families, and it's expanding and it's doubling, and everybody is halving, quite frankly. Its success is partly through its families, whereas the rest of Western families are dying. Okay. And why are these families successful? Well, clearly Muslims have gender roles. If you had to make a distinction between the different kinds of the dying families that were in the West and the growing families in the West of the Muslims, the Muslim families have gender roles, and the Western families have rejected them. So that seems to be playing a part. And then on top of that, the other kind of success is stable families make you happier. Like literally, I do research on these things. People who live in, say, multi-generational households, or just have good, have less loneliness and things like that. They live longer. They have less health problems. And then on the other side, the flip side of, like, when your families don't work, you have like more criminals. Your boys tend to be more delinquent because they need the guidance of a dad. It makes two to make children, you know, and takes both the mother and father to raise a child properly. And then, yeah, I suppose that's it, really. I mean, any thoughts about that? That's kind of like the behind the question. what success are we talking about? What is the gender roles? These are the things that are making Islam successful. It's the gender roles that make distinguish Muslims from non-Muslims, and you can see the success through families and the growth of the religion through families and converts and things like that. And yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, a society that practices marriage is what I would call patriarchy, in that you would expect a patriarchy to prioritize the preferences of married parents who want to properly parent their children, their legitimate children, and the converse of that is matriarchy, which is, I believe, what we are now, and it prioritizes the preferences of unmarried parents who casually conceived and parented their illegitimate offspring. And if put like this, it is already clear which which society's next generation will be better.
Yeah. Well, statistically, you can see if you have, as you put it, illegitimate children, which is obviously correct, then you have more criminality. This is known by psychologists. It's not just being rude about those families. So yeah, okay. And so I thought before I discussed some of these ideas with some of my students, and then uh, I realized there are some sort of basics or foundations to cover, and those foundations are: do we really want to grow families? Do we even want the human race to continue? Which seems to be a strange question, but it's actually a sadly common question because yeah, people seem to be hating human beings more and more. They say there's too many of us. We're overpopulating the planet, and kids are too expensive, and all these kind of things. So why, how could you say Islam is successful because it's having lots of children? Maybe that's a problem. So my few thoughts about that would be, first of all, if you're not suicidal, you want the human race to continue, and a lot of people are really behind the times in their statistics. The other day, I had a debate with one of my woke friends who was convinced that we are still having overpopulation, and I'm sure I've discussed it with him, but I think he just still wants to believe that the world is overpopulated, so he can continue his same old arguments from 10 years ago. But it's not true. Elon Musk says, and he's a numbers man, so he tends not to get numbers wrong. He says the greatest danger to the human civilization at the moment is population implosion. More than nuclear weapons and things like that. What else is there? And then on a sort of a personal health level, when I used to get messages from Cancer Research UK, not because I had cancer, but because I was just supporting them, it used to I got messages things like women should have at least 3 kids. So our biologies tell us that we should have children, otherwise something goes wrong. I'm a big fan of listening to our bodies to find out what we should be doing. Any thoughts? Should we be having families and things like that?
Well,
Is
if we
that a
want
good thing?
our group to carry on, then obviously we should have children. But before having children, we should marry. There used to be the statistic of what, 2.1 children that people are supposed to, that
Mm.
couples are supposed to have to keep the population stable. But it's 3 now, isn't it? As you said.
Oh no, actually, so the 3 kids is what you need. So I kind of said it really quickly. The 3 kids is what you need as a woman, on average, to save yourself from getting cancer or reduce your
Oh,
risk of getting cancer. Yeah. So it's interesting. There's all these statistics that keep telling us what we should be doing if we keep our eyes open to these kind of realities, you know. But yeah, so yeah, we need 2.1 or 3 children or something like that because so many people don't aren't reproducing and so many other and people die and things like that. So yeah, you need more than 2 kids just to maintain um, a population. Yeah, so yeah,
And
so
if
I
you
suppose
don't,
yeah.
you will create a demand for immigration, which is what all these Westerners are complaining so bitterly about. You know,
Yeah.
you know, it is disgraceful that their anti-immigration party doesn't say, well, you know, if you don't like immigration, you better have more children, better have more white babies, and educate them and parent them properly so they are trained for something when they grow up. So you don't have to, you know, import all this, you know, cheap foreign labour that you hate so much. But nobody tells them this. You know, their government doesn't say that, and their anti-immigration party leader doesn't tell them that either.
Yeah, they can't be told because they want it both ways. You know what I mean? They don't want to have the children, uh, and but they don't want to have the immigrants who make all the children. All the Muslims, I should say. Yeah. So that's yeah. Okay. So anyway, let's get on to the big question. So should women work? And I said I'm a Muslim and I teach things on behalf, you know, through Islamic principles. So I will quote things before I get started, short, small things, sort of paraphrasing from the Quran. Men lead women as men excel mentally and physically and provide. That's my sort of paraphrasing of chapter 4, verse 35. Now, the I'm a what we call an Ahmadi Muslim, and why do I bother even mentioning that? Because that will probably annoy a lot of people. It's just because we count. I don't want to get too technical, but basically, most people would say chapter 4, verse 34, when I say 35, because for some strange reason, Muslims seem to think that there's some extra verse of the Holy Quran there for no reason they don't count it. So, anyway, in short, the main point I'm trying to make is that, and this will definitely sound sexist, but I think people who look at their experience is that men do have an advantage over women mentally. Not that women are stupid or anything, but they are more calm and logical. And that's actually been found through psychological statistics, like where men are more prominent in STEM fields, you know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, um, whereas women are less prominent in those fields. That's just one way in looking at it. Um, Men generally tend to like things where women are more into people. So we've got. I'm not sure if that things approach make. I don't know if that helps, but it does make men more logical. Um, and women are just to balance out the argument. Women are more caring, but that caring doesn't work uh, when you're being too agreeable or too emotional about a direction you want to take. I'm not sure how well I'm explaining
Well,
it,
I think
but
going back to the theme of cat ladies
mm,
earlier, I think men basically want women to be, or their women to be, kind and stupid, or less intelligent than they are. So you know they can feel that you know they're not that their woman isn't going to play some trick on them and start bossing them around and you know doing all kinds of things that they don't like. So I think men prefer women to be kind, but not as clever as they are because I remember some classical you know one of the great what do I mean you know books written for Georgians and Victorians, and you have the mother saying to their clever daughter, don't show off your intelligence too much because you might end up being on the shelf because men don't like a wife of theirs to be too clever. So to hold it back until you get the ring on your finger and then you can let rip or something like that. So and this would be all right if men control politics. But now, if women control politics and they are stupid and kind, but not to men of their own race or country, then these men are in a lot of trouble. And this is the kind of situation that I think Western men are at now. They have no control and their women hate them.
Yeah, I mean, and it's actually how women choose men that they is it called a hypergamy?
Yes, hypergamy, which is actually understandable in that, I mean, all men would want the prettiest, sweetest, most loyal woman they can find. And women would want, the richest, most high status. I mean, they basically want a prince. Because that's the stuff of fairy stories.
So women actually men prefer to choose naturally, instinctively, men who are more intelligent,
earn more,
than
higher
themselves.
status, taller, all these other attributes.
Right. And it makes sense, right? So it's not. It is sexist, but I think sexist just is another word for specialism. It's just assume as long as it's sexism with a sort of
But it's a rational
with
choice.
a good intention. Yeah. So it's a rational choice to find somebody who can provide for you, because when you have children, you're in a sort of compromised and a weak situation when you can't do anything for yourself and you become dependent. So you want the best possible person who can take care of you. And so, yeah, it just makes sense. And yeah, and it's just my experience that through all the women I've known, and I'm not saying it in a bad way because it's men are more calm and rational. They don't take things personally, which is a good and a bad thing, right? So they make impersonal decisions that are they remove the emotion less. So they remove the emotion, they step back and they can choose longer term decisions, which has its advantages. But its disadvantage is that men connect less. So I'm trying to demonstrate that I'm not hating on women saying they're stupid, because if it wasn't for women, life wouldn't be worth living, because they bring the emotion and the caring and the connection that is necessary, but that only works in a sort of a very narrow and local way. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're just overly agreeable with everybody and overly just being kind to everybody and not being able to say no when you have to, which is a problem women have in work and many other situations, you're going to have problems. I think Jordan Peterson sort of said something like, kindness doesn't scale. It doesn't work on a large scale. It just works in direct relationships. I don't know if that makes much sense, but it certainly makes sense. It's my experience. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I suppose women don't want to be seen as a bad guy, and even if they wanted something bad done, they get the guy to do it. Kill that animal. Are you going to let him?
Or blame the husband.
Yes,
he did it. It was his
yes, he
choice.
made me do it.
Yeah, and it's all right. And you say, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So should women? Okay, attack of the 3-year-old. It looks like. Yep. Okay, never mind. Let's see how this goes. She's trying to squeeze into the room, into the studio. Never mind. She's not too bad. She might just jump on the bed up and down. Okay, she's been taken away. Okay, never mind. This looks like a violent protest. Okay, go on. Let her in. Let her. She was going to scream. She was going to scream and yeah, and she's saying bye bye to my oldest son that he's got rid of him. Anyway, so let's see how this goes. So anyway, should women work? Islam is very clear that men are better mentally and physically at leading a household. So the physically bit is that if you want somebody to maintain order, it's got to be the man. And you might say, oh well, and I hear this all the time in this sort of woke, and should I say confused, unrealistic days nowadays, where people say, oh, women can also be really tough, sometimes women are stronger than men. And I would say that's a dangerous situation, for when your wife is stronger than you. That means there's something wrong with you and you need to man up. Unless there are the odd situations where, you've been run over, you're on a wheelchair. Those are the exceptional situations, right? And then she should actually, in many ways, if you're completely disabled, as if you're unable to, you know, maintain order in the house because you've had an accident, or you've had a really bad accident and you're mentally ill and you're a vegetable. Of course the woman should take over in that situation, right? But other than that, I think you're in big trouble if you start saying, maybe my wife's tougher or smarter and all this kind of stuff. That won't work, because we're kind of pretending men and women are the same, and that's been the biggest problem we've been suffering from, and the cause of the breakdown of the family, because the rightful, or the most realistic roles are not being applied. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I suppose in every marriage you would have a certain arrangement, and I suppose the wife could always pretend to consult the husband and actually do it, whatever. But at least formally she says, "Now, what do you think?" And he says, "Well, just sign it because I know you're." It's that sort of idea. So Honor is satisfied on both parts that she appears to consult him and he appears to grant her permission, and all these niceties have to be observed for things to work well, I suppose.
Yeah, and it could be that just because the man is leading the house, you find in a lot of relationships, women are running the household because there are,
like the cooking and the cleaning. It's like, well,
yeah, like
that's
I
not
wouldn't,
your
yeah,
department.
yeah,
Or the
I would just,
gardening, which would
yeah,
be
or I
the
would just
man's.
follow the orders within the household. I'm the one who throws out the rubbish, and that actually again, works with nature, because women have a stronger disgust. What's it called? Disgust instinct or something. They're more sensitive to smell, and this is not just my opinion. Again, I'm not making things up. So I take out the rubbish, things like that, and I kill the mice and stuff like that. So
And deal
anyway,
with burglars, if any.
yeah, exactly.
Because
I'll
I
be
mean,
going.
you're not going to say, well, you're the feminist. You go and
Yeah,
check out that sudden noise that I heard.
yeah, at
Because I'm
midnight, whatever it is.
scared.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just to bring a sense of reality, if I ever opened a door, like often have this, I open a door and then my wife or some whatever lady would be going, "Oh, you shocked me." It's like if a man did that, I'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" Do you know what I mean? But it's just there's a difference, and we kind of have to. So there's the difference in. Come on, you can join. Hello, here she is, the dangerous girl, and it's on my leg. That's all okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm very popular, you see. So on one side, men and women are completely different, is what I want to say. And then on the other side, there's an argument that says that we need both men and women to work. It's just because things are so expensive nowadays that we need both men and women to work. And then there's another problem with that. It's called the two income trap, where there we go. No, not good. She likes to control everything. I've actually made a big effort. I've got a massive studio, like just to improve the picture, and she's trying to turn it off. Anyway, so with what the two income trap means is that when you both work, you incur lots of other costs like childcare. You spend a lot more on food because nobody's got time to cook properly. There's all sorts of health, side effects of that as well. And when you don't specialize, you fail both ways. So what I mean by that is, imagine I tried to be a plumber and a surgeon at the same time. I'll be rubbish at both. I'll probably kill all my patients, and there'll be leaks everywhere. You know what I mean? You got to specialize. In the same way, if men and women don't specialize, because men are, well tuned. Human beings are just incredibly well tuned tools, as it were. And so if a man tries to act like a woman, that's not going to work, because it's so different, and you're not taking advantage of all the statistically clear differences. So men are just much better at making money because they're just more industrious, because they care more about things rather than people. They're less caring. And then you'll find, so that's why men are always involved in STEM fields, whereas women tend to be in more caring roles like nurses and things which don't make much money. So what I'm saying there is that if you think you have to both work, you're actually damaging your chances of your husband actually making money. And that's my personal experience, that where both husband and wife work, it tends to work out worse, because they're both juggling things, they're both unhappy, their relationships are terrible because they never meet each other, both tired, and they're all compensating in different ways, maybe taking drugs to get some sort of happiness in their lives and things like that. So what do you think about this two income trap?
Well, I think I was reminded of the saying about, behind every successful man there is a supportive wife, and the wife would be more supportive if she didn't have a job and, just try to be of service to her husband rather than compete with her husband. So I guess at dinner time, both of you, if you've had a bad day, will be competing with each other to tell the worst. Well, with your story of your bad days, and maybe all that is required is for one partner to listen to the other properly, and then the frustrations and irritations of the bad day will be released after you tell the story. But if somebody's saying, no, my day was much worse because of A, B, and C, and and no way was your day as bad as mine, you would end up worsening your day, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's you've pointed out this really big problem in relationships at the moment. Is that people are not working together; they're competing with each other a lot. You should take out the rubbish, and I should do this, and splitting up roles, and you're not doing enough of the household work, and it really does not work. It's just a recipe for disaster. And then people are surprised by divorce rates are going up, and then everybody is giving up on relationships nowadays, and they shouldn't be surprised because they're starting off really badly in the first place. They're starting off with competition rather than cooperation. So yeah, two income trap, bad thing. And I like to point out that all the people who say you need two incomes, that's usually westernized or white people, and a lot of Muslims are managing. I know a lot of my family, so many other families that I know who are Muslim, they're doing great in one income, right? And
In the West or back?
in the West, that's my experience. And maybe because we prioritize taking care of children, we prioritize the family, we value all the subtle things that the wives bring. But there's a lot of there are some families who I feel are more westernized, and they don't do well. Those families that I know, Muslim families, income wise, actually do worse, I think, and even health wise as well. So that is a problem. And how do Muslims manage? What they do, they start off poor, and they because they're happy inside, and they value the small things, they value family and things like that. They don't mind having less money. They don't need the money to be happy in the first place. But I see the especially the English families, they they they're so materialistic centric that they think their children need loads and loads of really expensive things as well. So everything is expensive in their eyes. Where our house, we don't mind kids drawing over everything, and we don't care about appearances and anything like that. We just don't, it's just unimportant. We just really enjoy the space,
Yes.
and the kids go crazy in that space, and that's fine, things like that. So, yeah. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think as long as people, don't feel the need to, keep up with the Joneses in order to be happy, then they just happily drop out of it. It's only when they think, oh, but so and so has got this holiday or whatever, and I must have it too, and you feel terrible that your husband hasn't been able to provide you with them, or you can't get it yourself. Then it becomes a vicious cycle of frustration and self-loathing that you don't get this, the things that your contemporaries have. But yes, it's a
Yeah,
matter of
yeah.
attitude.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting thing. So I talked to one of my friends who's not Muslim, kind of, on the way back from school, and he got divorced, and he said basically his wife started making friends with other girlfriends, whatever you want to call them, and they were like, oh yeah, this is what we do with our money, and then she started feeling that she wanted more and more things, um, and he wasn't quick enough to make more money and things like that, and that broke their relationship. And so you don't have that so much in Muslim families. I think less, because necessarily it's going to be less because they have stronger values, right? Stronger spiritual values, and so we care less about these things. We're influenced less by these things. We're influenced less by the adverts. We have, I would say, better friends. People who are interested in spiritual things rather than materialistic things. So we don't have those problems. I think that's a good point you made. That people are struggle with, oh, this person had a holiday there and I saw this on Instagram and all that rubbish, and I don't think it affects Muslims so much. And so yeah, that helps a lot. And the last thing about why women should not work is that women are more agreeable. So you were talking about how women come back and often complain about how hard their job was. That's because they hate their jobs a lot more. Because I, as a man, if I don't, I mean, some men are more, I don't know, I don't want. How do I describe it? Do more of what they want to do, but women are more agreeable. So they are total pushovers at work. I see it all the time. And keep doing jobs they hate, and they feel scared of leaving a job out of the shame of it. It's like, for me, it's like, I'm leaving, see ya, I don't care what your opinion is, you know. But a woman, it's like they would just stick with a job forever, however much they hate it, and they're physically weaker. So I've noticed I'm doing something really easy at work. I'm a teacher in school, and be like, a woman would be like, oh, it's really hard getting up the stairs and whatever, because it's just physically different. We got bigger heart, bigger lungs, bigger body, bigger everything, So it's really hard to compete with men. So women being agreeable, do more of the jobs they hate. And I was looking at some videos where they were saying that women tend to have more affairs because they're kind of like, they're sucking up more and maybe things like that, and maybe they think they'll get them further in. I don't know what your opinion about this is, about having affairs at work, but I think that kind of makes sense in if you're a more agreeable kind of person and your boss is, I don't know, overbearing in some
There's
way.
just sort
Yeah.
of, more men whom you perceive to be more powerful than your husband.
Okay,
And
that's interesting.
it's
Yeah.
just opportunity, I think.
Yeah, and so you hate your job, you're likely to have more affairs. Maybe men do that as well. I don't know. It's whole different story. And then, but I also find because they're agreeable, they can't balance life and work that well. They'll take their work home and do it all night, and so they screw up their kids if they've got them, or even worse, like you were mentioning. earlier on, they don't know how to balance it at all and never have kids because they think it's too much of a burden. So 50% of 30-year-olds in the UK don't have kids. And I think, from the way I see that, that means you're not going to have kids at all, because although being 30 years old isn't the end. There we go. There we go. You're joined. That's it. That's it. Although I don't know what your opinion is, but if you're 30 years old and you haven't started having kids, I think your biological reproduction system kind of shuts down. That's what I've kind of noticed. But for people who've had kids already, they can carry on having kids even into their maybe late 30s. And so there's a whole bunch of problems about women being agreeable and them being able to balance life and work like men can.
Yeah.
I think. What's your opinion?
Well, there's the stress already. If you're 30 and you're not a mother and you want to be, and you're maybe starting from scratch on a relationship, then you're a woman in a hurry, and you're not going to be enjoying your relationships because it won't be relaxed. It's like, well, do you think, how do you see us in 5 years time, kind of question is not the kind of question you want to hear in a relationship. And I guess there will be men who make a point of not dating women of childbearing age, in order not to be faced with these terrible questions before they're ready for it.
Men
would avoid dating
women who are young
in their 30s.
Oh, childbearing age, or you mean on the limit of childbearing age?
I guess if you were a man and you were single and looking, you would avoid women single women from the age of 30, because then they'll be thinking, well, hurry up, I need to, before my eggs dry up.
Yeah. Because you said childbearing age, because childbearing age is 18, whatever, But you mean like on the verge of losing their ability to have children.
Well, maybe that's she's in a hurry. If you know she's already 30, and then you might feel a bit guilty of of wasting her time if you're not interested, and you've got to make a decision pretty soon, and quite often these decisions are not made, and then the woman feels angry and used, wasted her time, which is very precious, more precious for women than for men, and reproductive opportunities. So these things have to be considered, and women have a smaller window than men.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and that ruins the whole enjoyment of work, which men can, because there's no such. I don't know. I think I've even seen a video of a 90-year-old man having children. So the Arabs keep going anyway. But yeah, it's interesting. I think do you think, just sort of maybe a sidetrack, just trying to understand where you're coming from with the 30-year-old. Do you think being 30 years old is the time to start having children? Is that what you kind of feel, the way you're saying it?
Well, I'm saying you should have got your decent marriageable boyfriend in your 20s.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
Because when you start dating from 30, people will just think she's in a hurry, and I don't want to be hurried. I'd rather date a woman in their 20s. Or if I really don't want to be hurried, I will date a woman who has no chance of having children. And in fact, quite a lot of men do that. I mean, there would be men who've already had a divorce, and they don't want to be dating a woman of childbearing age because they don't want to be hurried. So they'll date a cougar, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what that means. You can Google what that means. Okay, so viewers,
which would have the effect of lowering the birth rate.
Sorry, what was about lowering the birth rate? Sorry.
Well, they would have the effect of lowering the birth rate. A man who chooses to have a relationship with a woman whom they know won't want children or
can't have children. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Sorry about this background noise. And then, so let's crack on with the next one. Where should women be cooks of the home? Again, that might sound really sexist, but I think incredibly important. People don't seem to realize the importance of it. Um, and I'm going to quote from the Holy Quran, which might sound strange at first, but the reason for relationships in the Quran is that men and women are described as garments for each other. And the word in Arabic for garment is very meaningful. It means both something that beautifies and protects, right? So by working together, they become more beautiful. In their relationship, in their specialist roles. So, what I mean by that is when you're a cook for the home, you're beautifying your home and your relationship in your specialist relationship, in your specialist role. So that's kind of the sense I get in that. Whereas the man might provide one thing like protection and you know uh, material things from outside in terms of work and whatever. Women provide something else, and they together they create a beautiful couple, as it were. So that's kind of the general idea of the specialist roles. I think makes the household beautiful. Like if you come into a home where men and women are not working together and they're always eating takeaways, it's a bit horrible. But when you've got a nice household where there's home cooked food being made and things like that, it creates a beautiful atmosphere, I think. So that's kind of the starting point. But then going into sort of the technical things, in the UK, only 1 in 5 households cook from scratch. And I think I'm actually surprised it's even that. Maybe it's just because of the high Muslim population, it's that high possibly. And the fact that when women stopped cooking and the process started in the 1950s, that started a whole domino effect of frozen food and the industrialization of food. And a lot of that industrialization has caused a lot of the greenhouse gases. So 1/3 of the greenhouse gases are come from producing meat, which includes clearing lots of rainforest and things like that, and using tons of water, like tons of pesticides, and so many other problems besides the methane. So there's a massive knock-on effect on women not cooking creates packaged, industrialized, processed food, which means a lot more transport around the world and terrible farming methods, etc., etc. So I'm making a lot of points here. So very few people cook when there isn't a designated cook who is only at home and not too tired to cook because they're not working.
I think men just like. I think everybody just likes, somebody cooking for them. You don't have to be a man to think, oh, this isn't, somebody made this dish from scratch and it's delicious, and and she's serving it to me, and aren't I lucky? It's just that a cup of tea being brought to you, being made for you. I think that's also very, very important.
Yeah, I think you explain it a lot more human way than I do. I kind of explain it in sort of a very mechanical way in terms of numbers, but I think you're right, exactly. So when people don't cook, there's a lot of knock-on effects, and yes, it doesn't feel very nice if you're eating. It's so much better having, let's say, your wife cook the food. And you might say, why should the wife cook the food? Maybe if people forgot the previous point, which is if men are going out and they're more industrious and better at making money, then who's going to cook the food? It's got to be women. Just makes sense. And they're more thoughtful and caring and remember things. They're more personable, so they remember your tastes, so that helps.
And then there's a certain pleasure watching a woman in a kitchen being busy, and you think, oh, isn't that great? She's my woman.
Yeah,
Or, that kind of thing. I mean, you see that in so many paintings. Or I just have this memory of a lot of, this idea of domesticity, and children in the kitchen and cooking, and this wonderful atmosphere of a living
yeah,
household.
yeah, a living household, and yeah, I do agree. I think a lot of West End households are broken households. They feel dead because there's no kids there, and actually Islam says that there's no blessings in a household unless you have children. So people, you might say, oh, what if you can't have children? Well, how, adopt children, first of all. So yeah, there is that kind of life that families, and without the mother at the heart of it, it's dead, and I try, yeah, I'm not very good at expressing that sort of idea, but yeah, men are very mechanical. We're good at the industrious stuff, but without women, without the heart of the household, there's nothing worth living,
Well,
um
that's the only way, the next generation of Muslims are going to be produced. I mean, you
yeah,
need men and women, and they need to live together, and do their best to bring up the children together, or you won't have any traditions being passed on, in any religion, and this is universal, isn't it? That you know, it really is the only way.
yeah, so that's why, again, we're coming back to the idea of why is Islam successful, is because it's actually passing on its ideas in double the numbers each generation, whereas everybody else's ideas, their failed ideas, the proof is in the pudding sort of thing, are they're halving because their ideas don't work, and it's being born out in their failed relationships, failed marriages, failed lack of children because they can't stand each other enough to have more children, things like that. So yeah, um,
I think the problem is
yeah,
also they don't believe in it because all the five world religions technically, officially support marriage and family values anyway. That's
yeah,
what they're supposed to do. But three of them are not really working. Well, okay, I don't know about the Hindus. I think they're still having more children than the Chinese. But I think, I guess more stable marriages require men and women who believe in God and won't cheat, or are less likely to cheat on each other. I think
mm,
that is, and keep their
yeah.
relationships
I
together.
mean, I think the problems in the other religions, and it's good that you touched on it, is that they don't really follow their religions anymore. They can't take them seriously. Like, if you're a Hindu and you think your god's a cow or a blue god with a couple of arms, nobody believes that really. So you don't take it serious. You don't really follow it. Um, so same with Buddhism. I mean, I was on a Christian. You invited me into a group where they actually pointed out both in Christianity and Buddhism, they actually revere people who don't have children, the monks and the priests. And first of all, you have really bad side effects. You can see the Dalai Lama, the pedophile, and priests are turning to becoming pedophiles. So there's that effect. But if you revere people who don't have children, what does that say about having children? That's doesn't look good. And it's not the original teachings of any of those religions anyway. So yeah, you have a lot of those religions really fail because either nobody really takes them seriously, or they've got some weird teachings which I think were not the original teachings anyway. So cool. So yeah, should women cook? That's sort of covered, I hope. Are women better at taking care of their babies? I do try to make too many points, so I'll just kind of focus on one or two, maybe. Something called baby brain. I like, as I said, I believe in listening to our biologies and even the science, quite frankly, which is telling us that when a woman becomes pregnant, her brain changes shape in so many drastic ways, and they've seen that it makes her specialize in taking care of children. So we should wake up to this reality. I've seen some BBC reports where they're desperately trying to negate this research and say, oh, it doesn't really mean anything, with some sort of weak counter evidence. I can't remember what it was, but it was ridiculous. But the point is, it's really clear, and it should be kind of obvious that, you're having a child, and if you appreciate that you're human beings, or just all creatures on the planet, are incredibly well designed. So if you're going to have a child and your body's clearly changing, so you can give milk to the child and so many things like that, why wouldn't your brain change? Why wouldn't you be the specialist and things like that? I think we've lost touch in this materialistic world with these obvious realities, that how our biologies are specialized for certain roles, like women taking care of children, and it used to be a completely obvious thing. And anyway, you take over while my protesting child.
I suppose you would think that. Okay, for just this totally understandable reason.
You carry on. I'm going to release the girl.
Okay. Our natural feelings of shame as a parent would mean that we don't want our kid to anything to happen to our kid while it's in our care. And so I think it would be the shame factor for any mother or any father who doesn't want anything bad to happen to their kid. Well, the parents of it. They don't want, and your kid, something happened to the kid and you were looking after it and you didn't notice because you were, I don't know, watching TV or playing with your phone or something. So I guess I'm assuming that you're talking about a mother's natural instincts, because she's all on high alert for anything, to prevent anything bad from happening to her kid.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing videos where they're trying to shame, these like YouTube shorts or these TikTok videos, and they were shaming men. When what they would do, they would go to a couple with children, and they would ask the dad, "Do you know the friends of your kids?" And the dad would say, "No, I don't know." And then the mother would take over, and they'll put some really wonderful music, as she's a hero, and in a way she is, and she would name all the kids' friends, right? Mm-hmm. It's just that they have that instinct, and it's just specialist roles. It doesn't mean a dad is bad. He's just good at other stuff.
Well, he wasn't there giving tea to the playmates of his kid, so he wouldn't know their names. Well, Mum would, because she, interacted with all of them and their mothers and checked out their, family background, presumably, and all the bread and butter stuff of socializing their children.
Yeah. What's the next point? Should women dress more modestly than men? And I feel like at this point, I always forget to mention that. So you're not actually wearing a headscarf and things like that. But at the same time, there's another sort of elephant in the room. It's like, why don't you have your camera on? And and I think you'd agree, my understanding is that you're more self-aware of your appearance. And I even when I'm at Speaker's Corner, there's people who very verbal and whatever, who are women, they often say to me, "Do you mind if I'm not on camera?" And I say, "Yeah, I totally understand, because I'm a big sexist, and I totally understand that women are completely different to men, and they are more aware, and we have to be silly not to realize that." It's like, if a man does his eyebrows, I think he's probably got a problem. And I know some people who do, and I know that they do have mental health problems, and I'm not being insulting. I feel sorry for them, right? And if a woman's doing her eyebrows, that's totally normal, and that's actually, part of
I'm
demonstrating.
looking at your eyebrows very closely now.
Okay. Right. So, and I don't care, right? Because it's all irrelevant to me, because back to sort of biological selection, women know that they're selected by their biology for certain good reasons. It shouldn't be the only way that they're selected, in Islam, we talk about spiritual values, but by nature, that's a massive factor, and men aren't really selected by their biology, really. So, for short-term hookup culture, it is right, but in for long-term, it's kind of like if they're caring and good providers, as far as my research goes. So, yeah. And you can be bold and still be cool, apparently. So, I don't know. Yeah, so what was I saying? Should women dress more modestly? Is the point I'm talking about right now. Well, yes, because they function differently. They're more self-aware. Therefore, they need to protect themselves more from even themselves, I would say.
Well, yes, because I mean, what it's called by dressing immodestly is a kind of scattergun approach, like, hey everybody, here am I'm up for it, look at me, sort of thing. And men can also have a scattergun approach, like, basically, trying to get every woman's number or proposing, and that would kind of suggest a desperation on the part of the man. And we just need a kind of balance to, give us a bit of dignity, whether we be male or female. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that just to give us a bit of mystery, so that there's something like, I'm only telling this because I like you, rather than I already tell my income level to any passing woman because, I'm so
Yeah, that's a good
desperate.
point. I like that idea about dignity as well, because a lot of, I think, I think it's again something I've studied. Body image issues um, are so there's a study that says that women who are religious who wear more modest clothes have less body image issues. What is that? Like you feel like you're in the right body, for example. You don't feel like maybe you should be a man, and you don't feel like being anorexic. You don't feel like killing yourself and things like that because you're not meeting up to the airbrush standards of fake, well, airbrushed models on Instagram. So yeah, so when women cover up. They have an air of dignity, self-respect. They can focus on other things, so they don't feel like they are just their bodies. Um, and men, of course, are supposed to wear not skin-tight clothes as well. There are some rules on men as well, but sh they are less caring. They don't care so much about their hair. Women care a lot about their hair. Um, so that's why women in Islam cover their hair, and I would say it
It's
protects
good for bad
women.
hair days.
Yeah,
For women, like, it's like, oh, but then you can quickly go out without, thinking you have to fuss around your hair. So I see the advantage of a hijab, you know.
yeah. I mean, I remember. So when I would go to school, and sorry, teachers go to school very early, way before everybody else has to, and then I'd ask. The ladies who, what time they get up, and they have to get up so much more early because they have to spend so much more time preparing, just on their appearance, they have to do stuff to their hair to straighten it or something. And me, I don't even have a comb, so just possibly, that's what I have to do. So whatever. So should women dress more? I'm just looking at some of my points if I missed anything. Uh, yeah, I suppose that's it really. I mean, have you got anything else to say about should women dress more modestly than men?
I think it's possible to be modest and elegant, and this was what Western women used to accomplish without making too big a deal of things. And well, I mean, what I see now is I don't know, wearing their underwear out and about, and it seems a little unnecessary.
I'm glad you're here. You're a lot more funny than I am. Uh, and that reminds me of I lived in Jordan for. I'm moving back to Jordan, but I lived in Jordan for a few years, and I didn't come back through for those 3 years. And when I came back, I was shocked because I felt like everybody was walking around naked. It looked scary, like literally people like animals. I'm not trying to be insulting, but when you see people, and there are Christians there in Jordan as well, right? Um, just people don't wear such revealing skin tight clothes. They think skin tight clothes is good to wear in England when you're going for a jog. It makes you effectively naked and all your parts are showing. And apparently that's just normalized now. So it's like, oh, that's fine. Just it's normal. So it really doesn't look nice. And I know people who say that some of the most beautiful things you can see is an elegant looking woman who is not wearing skin tight clothes. A Muslim woman, like one of my convert friends says. So, and he's totally right. It's so much more beautiful, so much more elegant, so much more family friendly, so much more, I don't know, beautiful in a more elegant way rather than sexy and animalistic, which is quite sad. I think it's quite desperate, I would say.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I
and
mean, I think a
yeah.
woman should sort of wear enough clothes to make a man who's interested in her want to see more of her, not oh, I didn't want to see all that, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really shocked sometimes. I mean, this is going to be rude, but might as well say it, right? There are some really fat people who wear really skin tight clothes, and like the fat is coming off their hips or something, and it looks really disgusting. And I'm not fat shaming. So if you're in a Muslim country and this had the same problem, but you were wearing loose clothing, it would actually look quite good because you don't have all your fat bits popping out of your pants and everything. You can see the lines of your pants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it looks really horrible. Somebody should tell these people. I don't know, but it seems to be fashionable. And again, I'm not being rude. I'm just thinking really doesn't seem to work. Um, so what's the next one? Can women protect their family like men? And I thought about this question mainly because you brought it up. I was like, I remember you saying like, who's going to protect me? And as a man, I don't really think about things like that. But since I mean, I like kind of I say women's perspective that I don't really consider, and I thought that would be a good thing to discuss. And you can see in Islam, there are such clear differences made that, for example, men are not allowed to wear silk, they're not allowed to wear gold, only women are allowed to wear silk and gold because Islam is all about masculinizing men, so they can be proper men. So they not just, and by the way, in Islam, men cry, they hug, you know, they way more than in any other religion,
They
they
also
cry.
kiss each other.
Yeah, that's right. So in Jordan, it's kind of very French over there. Kiss if you really like a person, you kiss them like lots of times on the cheek or something. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily Islamic, but I mean, yes, they do. Yeah, Muslims don't have personal distance, as it were. I kind of joke when I bring some of my non-Muslim friends to gathering with Muslims. I say, look, no personal distance here. Get into a Muslim hug, basically. It's a very normal Muslim thing to do. Because we all feel like we're brothers and sisters. Say all brothers when we're hugging. We don't hug women. So yeah. So I'm trying to remember. Yeah. So what was the question again? Can women protect the family like men? No, because men should be men and they're more healthier when they are the man. And some people go, like I said, mentioned before, women can be tough as well. That is a bad mental health sign when women are trying to be tough. That means they're trying to make their bodies do things that they shouldn't, and they should go for being women, and men should be going for being men. And because there's so many side effects, like first of all, a man is so obviously men are designed for protecting. They're physically bigger, stronger, hearts are faster, even the shoulders are further apart so that they can swing for punches, that you've got more momentum and whatever the word moment, if there's a mathematical term, whatever, right? So men are definitely stronger, but if you try to make if you try to diminish the differences, there are so many bad side effects that people don't seem to realize. For example, in sex, um, the lack of the differences diminishes the attraction between the opposites, and
Opposites attract.
yeah, opposites attract. And um, from my studies, women want to be dominated in sex because that has a biological message that when, as I said before, when women are pregnant, they are in a sort of compromised, weak position, and they want a manly person who's going to take over. Do you know what I mean? And take, protect her, serve her, not be, a bit of a soft man who's not going to be much use. So there's so many things to be said of men being masculine and women being feminine. So many side effects that we don't fully appreciate. I've done a little bit of study here and there, but it's just going to be terrible for people's relationships when they don't realize that men really need to be masculine, women need to be feminine. What do you
Yes, and
think?
it's so disturbing that so many men, it seems, want to become women. And that was what prompted me to ask the question: if what if all men became women? Well, then we'd all be helpless, and we'd be, well, I don't know, taken away as slaves by people, from a country not as stupid.
Okay. I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as I say, I always, my heart actually goes out to all Westerners and all their sufferings, including transgender people, because I actually, maybe this will be a different topic, but I do understand in a way why one of the reasons why there's a problem with, transgenderism and all this kind of stuff, including with men, for example, trying to be women, because they feel that they can't express their feelings. And so Muslim men do. They're always hugging. Uh, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to cry a lot, even though he was the toughest warrior, because he would cry for other people's problems. So there wasn't sort of this kind of emotional block that Western, especially British men have. They don't seem to be able to express any of their feelings at all. Really, they can't. Like, I'm just like a small typical thing is like I'm with a friend of mine um, down the street, and then like small things like the pavement's too tiny, so you're waiting for somebody to go past, and I would just keep looking forwards because I'm not shy of the people, and he would be looking away because of the sort of, British people can't make eye contact, they can't show any emotion, and the only emotion they can show in the sports, and they go grunt, hoo, hoo, hoo. Do you know what I mean? That's not real emotion. That's not your emotion. That's you just, I don't know, the team's emotion or something. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean? Some
tribal
tribalism is,
emotion.
yeah, it's tribal, but it's not really you feeling what you want to feel and expressing what you want to feel. So I do feel for British people, and I can see in some ways why they try to be women. I don't recommend it. I feel sorry for them, and I recommend Islam, I suppose. But yeah, um, yeah. Um, I suppose that goes to, can a man become a woman? I mean, I'm saying a lot of things, but what are your thoughts about, can women protect families like men? That's the kind of. Do you want to finish off anything about that, or?
Well, I mean, men are the one you usually expected to be, manual labourers, and farmers, and tillers of the earth, and soldiers. So, I mean, there is a reason because well, they're just stronger and better at these jobs than women, and presumably the reason why they would defend territory and their country against foreign attack is to protect their women and their children. and I guess they need to have women and children in order to arouse in their hearts the desire to protect them. And if they don't, and they all become women, then I guess nobody's going to be protected, which sounds like is what's the case now in the West.
Yeah, there's a natural instinct, and also I don't know. Yeah, there's so many other things like women. I can imagine women with a gun and saying, "I'm sorry, I have to shoot you," and then probably wouldn't shoot. And I really think that would happen. Do you know what I mean? The man would be like, "I've got to get this done." Bang, you're dead. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean? I
yes.
really think that's how it would be. And I remember being in a chat with some Christians, and they were telling me, "Yeah, a woman can protect herself." That's what, and I was saying to you, that's why your relationships are finished. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not being rude. You gotta realize the reality. Women are completely, really soft. My mum says women are like jelly. Do you know what I mean? So in terms of strength and stuff like that. So
And
anyway,
even if
just
you're not, you have to treat us as if you are, because that's what you're supposed to do. I
yeah,
think. But you make this interesting point about women in the army, because I saw this. Okay, this was in China, and they're very good at marching, and they have a women's army, and I think a lot of the reaction of the men over here when they saw the women's army is like, ooh, I wouldn't mind if you march right into my bedroom, darling.
okay. Oh,
That
I
kind of
see.
thing. So,
I thought
but
they were impressed for a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were impressed, but in that way. So it's like,
Oh,
if
okay.
there were all these women marching towards, the country of all these men that they're supposed to be invading, there would be no resistance at all, it seems, because apparently they're so attractive, all the women marching towards your country, and you kind of welcome them, or the men would welcome them anyway, if not the women, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They wouldn't consider them a threat anyway. Yeah. And so can a man become a woman? Hope you don't mind this video taking longer. I think it's my fault as well. I think that I was indulging too much in each question.
Not
You're
at
okay to
all.
keep
I don't
going?
mind. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please,
Yeah.
please do.
So can a man become a woman? And my argument, again, I think when I was in a video with you when we were discussing this topic, it sounded like it was being really rude, and I was told, don't be insulting. But actually, I'm not being insulting. I'm going to demonstrate that a man trying to become a woman can logically be seen as a mental health problem, because we already agree that, for example, in anorexia, if you think you're fat when you're skinny, that means you're putting yourself in danger, and that justifiably should be known as a mental health problem, because you are not accepting reality, and because you're not accepting reality, you're putting yourself in danger. And so a man pretending to be a woman, maybe that seems more subtle, but you definitely are putting yourself more in danger, because people who are transsexual, well, people have different excuses for why they're more suicidal, but I would say taking all those drugs that massively change you, that you're confused about your body, that you're not happy with your body, um, uh, yeah,
Every time you
you're
go
gonna,
to a
yeah,
public convenience, it must be traumatizing. It's like, which one should I go into? And who will
mm,
spot me for not being, the right sex to enter the public convenience?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, people don't seem to even it's for me it's kind of strange in this very scientific age when we know so many details about the differences between men and women at such a minute level, in terms of health, and we should be eating this vitamin and that vitamin and all this kind of stuff, and then we don't seem to think that transitioning from one sex to a completely different sex is not going to have a massive effect on your body. Absolutely, it is. It's just completely ruin you from inside, and you cannot realistically transition anyway, because there are so many, growing up as a man, you've got so many permanent changes like bone density, heart size, blah blah blah. The whole system, the whole brain
And
is
how are you
designed.
going to explain yourself to people?
Yeah,
Assuming that you turned into a really beautiful woman, and
yeah,
all the men were hot for you, and it's like, well, the point is that you don't have a woman's experience, and you won't be able to explain yourself, and you presumably you won't be able to get pregnant and bear children, and maybe you're wasting all the time and energy of these men who woo you and spend lots of money and time trying to court you and getting you to marry them, and then they're going to be so angry when they discover you're not really a woman, I imagine. So you're causing a lot of confusion were you to do such a thing.
Well, I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's true. um, yeah. Um, yeah, so you can't change deep-rooted biological effects. People seem to have this idea. It's really dangerous. Um, and what is it? If you don't, yeah, some things I've kind of made uh, talked about already. And so the last kind of section is what can women be in charge of families? Um, and my thoughts, I think I've repeated so many points anyway, so I'll just say kind of, well, I would say something like this. So you need um, some sort of red lines, a police system within any society, and that includes the mini society of your family, and that's got to be the man. And some people might say, well, a woman can be the boss and boss the man's physical ability. And I would say when you have a certain physical build, you have the brain that tells that physical build how to use it properly. It's like a child doesn't have the strength of a man, because if the child had the strength of a man, everybody would be in trouble. In fact, you do have that kind of trouble when people are drunk because their brains stop working. They have basically child brains with adult bodies, and you can see the disasters that happens, all the fights that you get into because of that. So, in the same way, women don't have that strength, and they won't know how to manage that strength properly. A bit like you were saying, I think there's a sort of a woman's insight of how to be a woman. There's a man's insight about how to be a man. You don't get angry, because when you get angry, it goes south really quickly. I mean, you don't really want to use that force, but women be like, she can get violent, and it makes no difference. You'd be like, I'm really angry. Why do you do that sort of thing? It's like it makes no difference. So, yeah. Any thoughts about that?
Well, uh, the thing about gender roles is that it funnels us into a particular position where it's just easy to make decisions like, oh, you're a man, you do this and you do that, and you're a woman, you do this and you do that, and if you kind of mix it all up, then it confuses the person, and it might be a bad result, I think, and I think
Yeah, it's hard
basically
to.
that is the problem, really.
Yeah, are you saying it's like hard to choose if it's not decided by, let's say, God, who's going to be in charge, maybe?
Well, I'm saying life is hard enough, even as men happy to be men and women happy to be women. And a lot of people still, have all these moral dilemmas about what they're supposed to do. And if you kind of double that and thinking, oh, I'm a man, but I could be a woman, and then you have all these choices to confuse and to get wrong, you are creating a larger potential for confusion and disaster.
Yeah,
And there's
so
no need for it.
yeah, and so I was talking specifically with regards to this last question, can women be in charge of families? I think I forgot to kind of, there's only one verse of the Quran I keep sort of repeating. So men lead women. The proper word is are guardians over women, or better description is guardians over women, because they excel in mental and physical things, and they
They are a
provide.
degree over women, but only if they provide and protect. And if they
Yeah,
don't provide and protect, well, then the woman can, well, be her own boss in her own household, which I think is fair enough.
well said. Yeah, you know the Quran well. And so, yeah, and so when you earn the money, it it kind of forces the situation that you are in charge effectively. You know, it's not sort of practical any other way. So if you're able to, you know, protect, like you say, and provide, and you're physically stronger, all these things kind of make it pretty clear that there's only one natural leader in any household, and
Yes,
that's going to
because
be the men.
if your wife doesn't agree and she wants to do something a little bit different and you don't agree, and you can always say, well, who pays the bills round here anyway? And then
Yeah,
she'll have to, well, give way.
yeah, but and like you said, also they as a guardian is supposed to be taken care of. And there's many other verses of the Holy Quran which make it really obvious that you're supposed to be taking care. You're supposed to be a caring leader, not a dictator. Um, and so men can do that. And I think having a woman, just kind of my last point, just a last thought, because I know in my household, although my wife's wonderful, my mother's wonderful in her own ways, right? I would never want them to be in charge because they're very emotional and you just get disaster if they were like, this is what's going to happen. Um, but they're sort of in charge in a smaller realm, let's say, which is within the household, and
Yeah,
they,
if you're talking about family
yeah,
businesses, I don't think you can
the
hand it
sort of
over.
direction the family's going, sort of thing. Like the big things, men are calm enough to think long term and more thoughtfully, and they're more. Again, this is going to be super sexist, but absolutely, I think it's right. They're more aware of how the world works in a macro, high level sort of thing. So they kind of appreciate the bigger picture, and women are really good at the details and the interpersonal relationships, but not at the macro sort of big level. Anyway, so that's how I feel. I mean, that's what I see. Yeah.
Yes, and I think also, even if women do see, the macro level, the cut and the dog eat dog world of competition and business and politics, they might not wish to express it because womanly modesty. They don't want people to think they're really cunning and devious and manipulative, and so that there's a kind of this grey area that maybe a lot of women don't want to be honest about, maybe.
Yeah, cool.
Well, men are allowed to be ruthless and whatever because that's their kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, it's okay for us to be a bit more rude and stuff like that. I think women really don't like being um, as impolite as we can be. So great. You have any last words, and then we'll just hang up. I mean, for me, it's been fantastic. Really, I'm really glad I could talk about this incredibly important stuff, and hopefully, it will change some lives. Any last words from you, Claire?
I think we've discussed it very well. We've discussed transgenderism and feminism and the importance of gender roles, which I think marriage is something that I think was the purpose of all these gender roles. I think we did say that previously, but I see no harm in reminding people again that maybe this fluidity of gender that Westerners have now is because they don't marry each other. But if they did, if they all thought, well, we have all got to have children, we're all going to get married, it's really important that I get married because it's considered low status if I don't get married, then they will get married and then they will conform to all these gender roles and they won't be whinging about not feeling, like a man or like a woman and, have all these fussy operations made on them. And I think Islam can bring it back, like saying, well, if nobody marries you, then, well, maybe there's something wrong with you. And maybe, this is not a good way to be. And if you kind of make it the culture to get married, then people will be conforming to their gender roles without making so much of a fuss.
Yeah, yep. Clear red lines about how life works. Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Claire. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye. So we're still talking, or we're okay? Right. Okay, I think that went well, and I'll turn this off. Thank you all for your attention, and talk to you